Hello and welcome, Ryan here from Fiscal, and today I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into users and roles. So when we're looking at our users in Cin7 Core, we can see that we have the status, what type of user are they, the user's email address, and their roles and permissions, and whether or not they're a co-owner. You'll notice that we have the green tag for your advisor, and when we're looking at our seat allocation or the capacity of users that we have available on our Cin7 Core package, our advisors do not impact that at all. So if I have 5 users and I have a max capacity of 5 users, I can still add an advisor. However, obviously, if it's just a plain user, it will take up those seats. So when you're adding Fiscal, it'll be as an advisor. Going in, you can select each individual user and set their effective permissions. However, we need to set up roles first. So going into our roles, we can add new roles or add new users to the roles. But when we're looking at the role, this is where we'll set up the permissions. So we can either grant full access or read-only access. So the audit report is found in reports and audit reports and audit. This will give you a detailed overview of every task that has ever occurred in your Cin7 Core account within a date range for particular categories like the zero integration, account mapping, any sort of additional attribute changes, and so on. And then you can isolate it to a particular client user as well to see how each user is using the system. Then we go on to CRM. Obviously, this will dictate how much use case or how much permission they have to change within the CRM. It's either going to be read access or full access. And then if we don't want them to have any access to voiding, for example, then we'll revoke the access or the permission to that action. Going on to the dashboard, again, it's also read-only or full access. If I want to remove them from viewing the purchase orders, purchase order bills, and so on from the dashboard, this would be this panel over here. If I take that permission away, that is how that functions. Looking at financials, this impacts all of the financials module of Cin7 Core and what the user can and cannot do there. Going on to fulfillment. Now this one is obviously quite important when we're looking at our pick, pack, and ship stage of the sales orders. Can we view and edit the order list, the order details, and then obviously scheduled orders for picking in the WMS app. Integrations, this one's quite important. If we want certain users to only have access to the zero integration or allow users specific access to specific integrations when it goes to setting it up or using it, this is how we would limit access thereof. Then we go into inventory. Obviously, if we have or for example, if we have a sales manager that should not be editing any product information, then we would make the user or the role rather, we would make the role certainly a little bit more restricted. However, if it is a product manager or a warehouse manager, or the production manager, for example, then we would be able to. We would obviously want them to have the right permissions for inventory. Looking at locations, maybe we don't want everybody to be able to create a location or edit a location, which can be, things like setting up supply rules and bins and so on, and editing those details. Maybe we don't want that because we want to keep a very clean and structured approach to how we're managing our locations. Also, quick thing to note is if we have a location and there has ever been a transaction that is pushed or occurred within that location, we will never be able to delete it again. Looking at MRP, obviously, if we have a production planner, then MRP is quite important permission. But if we're looking at potentially a sales manager or maybe even just a finance manager or whatever the case may be, we want to limit the MRP function or access thereof, this is where we do it. Manufacturing, this is impacting our production module. So that is assemblies, disassemblies, production orders, and it also includes the advanced manufacturing module of Cin7. So if we have, for example, a sales manager, they shouldn't have access to assemblies, for example. Money, we're not going to worry about. Purchases, again, a sales manager would not be necessarily too concerned with purchases. However, your production manager or your supply chain manager will definitely be curious to know what goes on and need functionality in the purchase module. Yeah, going on to RMA. Again, this is where we would set this up and so on. Reports can be quite important. We can isolate financial reports away from certain users, purchase reports, sales reports, inventory reports, and so on. Looking on to sales, very similar thing. Settings, now this is obviously quite an important one. If we want to limit this to only an admin user, for example, then every other user should have this removed. Shipping services. Yeah, I think you get the idea of how this is how this works. Then when we look at adding a user, okay, I don't have any users at this point because we're all advisors. However, when we look at a user, we can actually go in and change their effective or special permissions. So we have effective permissions, and then we will also have role permissions, and then we can also then have special permissions, and then we can fine tune a particular user. So maybe we have 3 warehouse managers. One is more senior than the other 2, and the other one requires access to some of the financial reporting, for example. Then they would, this is where we would set the special permissions, which would then affect their effective permissions. So the role permission and the user permissions are quite something to balance. And so we just need, when we're looking at a particular user and their effective permissions, it's one thing setting up their roles. It's another thing going in to the specific user and ensuring that their special roles or the special permissions are also correlating or allowing them further or more limited access. Right, and that is everything to do with users and roles.